Hello, I'm Steve Weber, the host of Beatles Rewind. As always, I'm joined by my co-host and fellow Beatle maniac, my confidant Cassandra. Good morning, Cass.
Morning, Steve. Ready to rewind?
Always. Cass, today let's talk about an instrument that isn't often associated with popular music, rock music, or the Beatles. The banjo.
Right, the banjo. Doesn't immediately scream Beatles.
No, but it has been used many times in rock, and the banjo was something that had a big impact on the Beatles, particularly with John Lennon.
Yep. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, so we're looking at musical history today,
Mm-hmm.
focusing on this instrument, the banjo, which you just don't really connect with 60s rock, do you?
No, it seems kind of counterintuitive. You picture John Lennon, with his Rickenbacker, maybe a Gibson, definitely not a banjo.
Exactly.
But today, we're sort of following the research, and it points to this major, almost invisible influence.
An invisible influence, I like that.
Yeah, the banjo had this profound impact on John Lennon's earliest musical learning, and that shaped the whole rhythm of the Beatles.
Right.
Really.
Right. So our goal for you today, listening in, is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We want to trace the DNA, let's say, of John's playing style.
Mm.
Why did his rhythm guitar sound so punchy, so driving,
Yeah.
and so different, really, from George or Paul?
And the answer, well, according to the material we've looked at, it goes back to that four-string instrument, the one his mother taught him.
It's like a fantastic bit of musical archaeology, isn't it?
It really is. We're trying to figure out why that maybe slight technical imperfection he had.
Or perceived imperfection?
Right, why that became, you could argue, perfect for rock and roll.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning then. The teacher and the instrument.
Yeah.
John's first mentor, his first instrument.
Yeah,
That all came from his mother, Julia Lennon.
that's right. Before the guitar obsession, before anything else, it was Julia and her four-string banjo.
And this context is really important, isn't it? Julia was, well, described as very musical, fun-loving.
Unconventional, definitely. A real contrast to Aunt Mimi, who raised him mostly.
Mimi wanted structure, books.
Yeah, behave properly. And Julia was the one teaching him chords. The sources, they paint this picture of Mimi really not being happy about Julia letting John mess around with music instead of homework.
A classic story. And the banjo itself, it wasn't just some random choice.
No, not at all. The sources remind us in 1950s Britain, the banjo was actually pretty common.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a staple in, music halls, and crucially, it was the key instrument for skiffle bands.
Ah, skiffle. Lonnie Donegan territory.
Exactly. Skiffle was kind of the precursor to UK rock and roll, right? The sort of folk-inspired, do-it-yourself music craze.
Made it easy for kids to start bands. Cheaply.
Totally. Acoustic guitars, maybe a bass made from a tea chest, washboards, and yeah, banjos. Very accessible.
So that foundation, Julia gave him the tuning, the specific chord shapes for that four-string instrument.
That became the absolute building block for everything John did musically afterwards.
The sources call this foundation both limiting and liberating. Okay, how does learning banjo first limit you when you grab a guitar?
Right, this is where we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of it. The four-string problem.
Okay.
The instruments are different physically, obviously, but the main thing is the tuning and the logic behind playing chords.
Right.
A four-string banjo, it's often tuned to an open chord, like open G or maybe open C.
Meaning you just strum it, no fingers down, and you get a full chord.
Exactly. Instant, nice sound. So changing chords might only take one finger, maybe two. Super simple.
Easy gratification. Makes sense.
Precisely. Now, fast forward. John wants to switch to a six-string guitar. He's seen Elvis. He's heard Lonnie Donegan.
Inspirations.
Huge.
Yeah.
But he hits this massive wall. Standard guitar tuning, that E-A-D-D-E, we all know.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a nice open chord when you just strum it. To play, say, a G chord on guitar, you need what? 3 fingers? 4 sometimes.
Usually across 4 or 5 strings too, yeah.
Right. So John was basically trying to map these simple 1 or 2 finger shapes he knew from the 4-string banjo onto this totally different 6-string system.
That sounds awkward.
Yeah, it was. He treated the guitar like it only had 4 strings, often just ignoring or kind of muting those 2 lower strings, the E and A.
Because his banjo brain didn't know what to do with them.
Pretty much. It was pure banjo thinking on a guitar, which led to these really unconventional chord voicings, very raw, sometimes kind of crude playing, technically speaking.
And this is where fate, or maybe just good timing, steps in. Paul McCartney arrives on the scene.
The legendary meeting, July 57,
Oh,
Woolton Parish Church Garden Fete.
right.
And Paul, well, He was more musically savvy, at least in a traditional way. His dad was a jazz guy, a pianist.
Ah, okay.
So Paul knew proper technique. He knew how to tune a guitar to standard. He knew those standard open chord shapes.
And the sources say Paul really impressed John with this knowledge,
Yeah.
showing him standard tuning, bar
Oh,
chords.
yeah. It was like John suddenly got the instruction manual he'd been missing.
Must have been a revelation.
Totally liberating. But it's also really telling, isn't it? Paul showed him the right way.
But John didn't completely switch.
Nope. He kind of absorbed enough to function in the band, stay roughly in tune, hit the basic chords Paul showed him.
But he kept that original banjo approach.
He absolutely did, that sort of rougher, quick and dirty method. It wasn't just a phase he grew out of, it actually became his signature sound.
Okay, so let's unpack that. How did this banjo legacy, this technical sort of gap, actually turn John into a rhythm genius?
Well, it basically forced all his energy into rhythm instead of fancy fingerwork.
Because the banjo itself is percussive.
Fundamentally, it's built to cut through noise, to drive the beat. So that gives us the first big trait of John's style. Rhythmic drive over melodic complexity. He didn't just strum, he, attacked the guitar.
The sources often use words like aggressive, even violent sometimes for his early rhythm playing.
And you can hear it. Listen to something like, I Want to Hold Your Hand, or the chords in She Loves You.
Relentless.
Totally. His downstrokes are just so forceful, almost like a machine gun. If you learned guitar properly, you might use softer upstrokes, more nuanced.
Feathering the strings.
Exactly. But John's playing is just pure rhythmic engine. Pow, pow, pow. That driving quality. That's pure banjo heritage. Precision isn't the point. Volume and pulse are.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, treat two then. The simplified chord voicings you mentioned. He wasn't going for lush harmony.
No, he got something else. Directness. Because he started with those simple 4-string shapes, he often just defaulted to easier 3 or 4 finger voicings on the guitar.
Not looking for the richest sound, but the hardest hitting.
Exactly. The sound that punched through fastest, and that simplicity, that rawness gives the early Beatles that famous energy. It was kind of the opposite of, say, sophisticated folk music.
And trait 3, this is maybe the fun one for guitar players. Unconventional fingerings. Dealing with that 6-string neck.
Yes, this is where he really broke the rules, because he needed a quick way to loot strings he wasn't using, or maybe grab a quick bass note without using standard technique.
What did he do?
He often wrapped his thumb right over the top of the guitar neck, which is actually a really useful, common thing on a banjo neck. But guitar teachers, they usually tell you never to do that. Keep your thumb behind the neck.
Right, for proper technique.
Yeah. But for John, it wasn't about proper, it was functional, it was adaptation. And it gave his chords this unique, kind of gritty feel sometimes.
He just found the quickest route to the sound he wanted. Forget the rule book.
That's it, exactly. And the final trait, maybe. The famous jangle.
We usually credit George Harrison with that, right?
Right.
The Rickenbacker 12-string.
We do, and rightly so for the lead lines. But John's rhythm playing contributed massively to that early Beatles jangle. Think about the banjo itself.
It's bright, ringing.
Very bright, very ringing, just because of how it's made, and John seemed to want that quality from his guitar too.
He wanted his rhythm part to cut through and sparkle.
He did. So you combine that really aggressive rhythmic attack with his preference for simpler, braider chord voicings.
And you get this underlying rhythmic shimmer.
Exactly. George laid the sophisticated lead lines on top, but John provided that driving, percussive jangle underneath. It's got banjo DNA all over it.
So, just to summarize the band's guitar dynamic then, you have Paul, who becomes this technically brilliant, versatile player, Blackbird, for example.
Masterful stuff.
Then George, evolving into this really sophisticated, melodic lead guitarist, finding unique tones.
Absolutely. His solos became iconic.
And then there's John. He stays the rhythmic heart,
Yeah.
the engine room, aggressive driving.
And fundamentally shaped by his mom's 4-string banjo lessons. His role was propulsion, and honestly, that rough driving style he developed through adaptation, it was probably better suited for raw, early rock and roll than any properly trained guitarist could have been.
It really defined their early power. Now, despite this constant influence of the banjo style, the actual instrument, it barely shows up on Beatles records, does it?
Very, very rarely. By the time they had, unlimited studio time and freedom, they were exploring sitars, mellotrons, orchestras.
Moving beyond their roots.
Yeah. The banjo maybe felt like part of the past, but there are a couple of little appearances, usually involving the banjolay.
The smaller hybrid, banjo body ukulele neck.
That's the one, 4 strings. The most famous example is probably All You Need Is Love.
Right, during the Our World TV broadcast in '67.
Yes, if you listen really closely during the big chaotic fade out.
The party at the end.
Exactly. John's in there somewhere playing a banjoleo. It's buried deep in the mix, part of that whole celebratory, almost drunken kind of ragtime feel at the very end. Less structure, more color.
A bit of fun. And then much later, there's that lovely little touch in Free as a Bird.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. George Harrison, in 1995, working on the track, he deliberately added this little whimsical banjolized strum right at the very end as the song fades.
Why?
It was a direct, really affectionate tribute to George Formby.
Ah, the legendary English entertainer, Mr. Lean on a Lamppost.
The absolute icon of the banjolay in Britain. So it was George Harrison acknowledging that specific bit of British musical heritage, connecting it back.
Nice touch. The sources also mention, though, that Lennon wasn't alone in finding power in that banjo sound, even if his was indirect. The actual banjo has popped up in rock surprisingly often.
Oh yeah, it works really well as a textural contrast, or sometimes for its specific associations.
Like Americana.
Definitely. Think of Jerry Garcia. The Grateful Dead had those deep bluegrass roots that would surface sometimes. Or the Eagles using it on Take It Easy.
Signals that folk rock, country rock vibe.
Instantly. And then you look more recently, that huge banjo renaissance in the 2010s.
Mumford & Sons, the Lumineers.
Exactly. And that's where you really see the power of the banjo's rhythmic attack come back to the forefront. Bands like Mumford & Sons weren't just adding texture.
No, it was central.
It was the main driving engine on huge folk rock anthems like Little Lion Man. It proved, without a doubt, that the banjo's percussive, bright energy could drive modern rock just as effectively as John's banjo-influenced guitar drove the early Beatles.
It's that ability to cut through everything else, provide that bright, maybe slightly raw energy.
Yep. Textural contrast, signaling Americana, pure rhythmic drive, adding energy, sometimes even a bit of irony. It's versatile.
Which ultimately brings us right back around to our final thought on John Lennon.
Right. He never became a proper, technically polished guitarist.
And thank goodness for that, maybe.
Honestly, yeah, rock and roll is absolutely better for it. That style, he developed all energy over precision, rhythm over delicate polish. It was the perfect catalyst for that early Beatles sound.
That limitation, having to figure out how to make four-string ideas work on six strings.
It forced him into this unique, powerful, aggressive technique that just defined the sound of a generation.
So Julia Lennon's informal kitchen lessons on the banjo.
Yeah.
They ended up creating this rhythm guitarist who sounded completely unique.
An absolute force of nature on rhythm guitar. His attack was just incredible.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Sometimes skipping the correct way, the formal lessons.
And just figuring it out yourself through necessity, through adaptation. That's where real, unique genius can come from.
A sound nobody else could have made.
Exactly. If the banjo is what taught John Lennon to play with that much raw fire,
Yeah.
well, maybe we should all be grateful he missed that formal guitar lesson.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Whenever you feel like knowing more about the Beatles, visit us at BeatlesRewind.com. Every day, we do something new there. Book reviews, song reviews, movie reviews, trivia, all things Beatles. Every day, 8 days a week. You can find us on the website, BeatlesRewind.com. You can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Podcasts, practically anywhere. The Beatles, all day, every day. Cass, we'll do it again tomorrow.
Absolutely. See ya.
Until next time, when you listen.
Your mind conducts its own symphony.